Good morning. We're learning as discussed for Shlema for Ilan Chaya Baserach. We are on Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, but we're just going to remind ourselves where we're up to. Right in the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Vav, the original Mishnah, we said the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Right, so Beis Shammai had said that every carbon, a standard carbon, as long as you do one of the matanas of the zrika, you already get a kapara. But chatas, it's two matanas. Beis Hillel disagreed. He said chatas is not any different. Chatas is also just one matan. So we said that we brought a raya. Where does it come from that stama carbon is with one matana is keeper? So he brought the last Gemara brought the raya. Now the Gemara is asking. The Gemara asked on Daf Lamed Zayin of the Beis. The Gemara asked, what do you see differently according to Beis Shammai? Where does Beis Shammai get that chatas is going to be different, that it's going to require two? So he brought from Karnas, he made a cheshbon, and we had the whole back and forth of how to darshan Messiah, and whether you split the difference. Okay, so that was the first pshat in where we see that Beis Shammai holds that by a chatas, two matanas are going to be mechaper. You need two zrikas, so two nesinas dam. You don't have a zrika per se by a chatas, so you have as a nesinas dam on the kronos of the top of the mizbeach hachutz. So that was the first pshat. So now we're up to 5 lines from the top. We're going to have a different source for this din that a chatas, according to Beis Shammai, requires that the first two nesinas dam are ma'akav. The Tana Ma'aseh Mehacha. We have a different brayso that brings it from a different source. Before we said kronos. Now we're going to darshan v'chiper. It's actually on the same sukkim, right? Where we had first the chatas of the nasi, and then we had also the chatas that was brought for an aiz and a chatas of a keves, of a goat and a sheep. So each one of them, the Torah repeated over the whole nusach, right? By the first one, the chiper is v'es kol chelba yaktem zveichel zevachim v'chiper lavakayim michatas v'nisach. Like the second one is kol chelba, zibin. It's called Chaba Yasser Kasher Husa Chelam Me'al Zevach Hashlam VeHikter Akayin HaMizbech LaReich Hashem VeChipa LaVakayim Nisach Lai. It's called Chaba Yasser Kasher Yusa Chelam VeChesef. This is by the A's. Zevach Hashlam and VeHikter Akayin HaMizbech Alisha Hashem VeChipa LaVakayim Al Chatos Eshachat VeNislach. Okay, so we have 3 Vechipas. And why do we have 3 Vechipas? So now it gets a little murky. Nehadin, because I would have wanted to learn it out like this. Because I would have said, Dinu. Nemru damim lamata. V'nemru damim lamayla. It says damim legabe lamata, meaning from the bottom part of the mizbeach, which is the karbanos that are not a chatas. V'nemru damim lamayla. And we also have damim that it says you have to do a zrikas dam lamayla by the chatas. So the other karbanos shenasim batanachas keep it, right? That was before we talked about chatas. We said that shenasim batanachas keeper we had from Menishma. What was the pasuk? The first pasuk. V'dams v'checha yishafech. We learned that nitn batanachas keeper. So just like we find by other karbanos avdam mamum l'mayla, so too by the chatas. That would be one possibility. Or I might say I would learn differently. If you remember, in the second part of the Mishnah, we said about the matnas pnim that all of the nesinas dam are crucial; they're all required. So maybe chata should be compared to those. Just like all of the matnas dam by a matnas pnim, there's no exceptions. They're all required. required. Maybe you'll also say legabi the chatas. So we're in the middle of Lamed Chesam and Aleph, and we're searching for an alternative source. This is a different raya, a different explanation of why Beis Shammai says that by a chatas. No, Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai says that you need two zrikas. The first two zrikas are both going to be ma'akev for. We're not talking about Beis Shammai.
No, Rashi says that the
so where do we? Let me see. Oh, why? Right? Why is Beis Hillel chaylik? Right? Why is Beis Hillel chaylik on Beis Shammai? What does he learn from Kronos? Right? This is where we're up to. We're trying to understand why Beis Hillel disagreed with Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai learned from Kronos, that you need two. So we said a first explanation why Beis Hillel was chaylik, and said, no, you only need one. Now we're giving a second explanation of why Beis Hillel is chaylik. So the Bryce is saying, I would have had a question. Should we learn out the chatas from other karbanos that one matan is mechaper, or maybe we should learn it out from the chatas pnimius that all of the matanas, all four of them are mechaper. You need all four of them. Nir l'midaimus. The Gemara says, which one is it more similar to? Dan chutz michutz. Maybe I should learn the chatas chutz, a regular chatas, a standard chatas, from the other karbanos that are also brought on the mizbeach in the azara, the standard mizbeach, but not compare it to the chatois pnimius that are very different. They're very non-standards. Or maybe you should say no. The lemaisa, even though it's in the mizbeach hapnimi, it's also chatas. So I should learn out a standard chatas from the chatois hapnimis, which is the chatas parkoin mashiach and the chatas nasi and so on. But it's all the chatois pnimis are also chatois. They also need nesinas dam on the arbakron. So maybe that's what it's more similar to. And don't learn it out from chutz, from the karbanos that are brought up chutz, which don't have that similarity. So we're left with the question: which one should we follow? A long way of getting back to what the Bryce had originally said. We learn out from the three v'chipers. So what is the drasha from the three v'chipers? V'chiper afal pishalinos and elashalish. V'chiper afal pishalinos and elashtain. V'chiper afal pishalinos and elachas. We say the Torah says there are four nesinas dam by chatas. So each v'chiper is a riboy and says that it's going to be mechaper even in an additional case. So the first one tells you, even though the Torah says four, if you only do three, that will be mechaper. Then the next one tells you, not only if you just do three, even if you do two. And the third will tell you, even if you just did one, that's enough to be mechaper. Which gets us all the way back to just saying, it seems like such a roundabout way, right? Because we said that every carbon, a single one of the nesinas dam is enough to be mechaper. You don't need all four, or two actually, which is usually the case for other karbanos other than chatas. You only need one. We learned out from the Kronos that chatas should really need two. But now we're going all the way back, and we're saying Bechiper brings it back and says that it's just the same as everything else, and just one is going to be mechaper. So we have Kronos being marba, sort of, and then the keeper to be memayit. Or actually, the way it says is to be marba. Practic Gemara, how could you say these v'chipers are available to tell you that you only need one nesinas dam to be mechaper by a chatas? You need it. Those three v'chipers are each talking about a different carbon. It's talking about, first it said by the Sawyer Nasi, then it said when you bring an A's, and then it says when you bring a keves, and then it says when you bring an A's. It's coming to tell you all three of them, that you that they can be a chatas. So you need each one. Amar Rava Barada, Mari Asberli, my Rebbe explained to me, Amakra v'chipa v'nislach, zui kapara, zui slicha. What does it have to say? V'chipa and the v'nislach. The chipa is unnecessary to tell you that you get a kapara. You already said you get a slicha, and they're essentially saying the same thing. So that all the kaparas that it says here are extra, and that's how we know to reduce that you only need one of the nesinas dam. So the Gemara, Ema b'chiper afal pishal enosan el shalosh lamayla va'achas lamata, b'chiper afal pishal enosan el shtayim lamata shtayim lamayla, b'chiper afal pishal enosan lamayla el lamata. So maybe let's divert this these b'chipers. Instead of telling you that you only need one nesinas dam, it's not coming to tell you that just one nesinas dam is enough to be mechapa, but rather it's telling you not a totally different din, but a different din in the same vein, in the same. When it's talking about the chatayis are supposed to all be done lamayla mechut hasikra on the upper half of the mizbech. Let's say that the first one is going to minimize it, even though we say you need 4 lamayla. It's tell you even though you only did 3 of them lamayla, and you did 1 on the bottom, that's also mechaper. And then the second mechiper tells you, even if you did 2 and 2, you're still mechaper, even though you had 2 lamata in the wrong place. And the final one, once you say that even if you did 3 lamata, there would be no reason to say you don't also do 4. Because once you have most of them lamata, there's no reason to distinguish between 3 and 4. At least that's the Gemara's assumption at this point. So once you would have, it would be coming to tell you, even if you did all of them lamata, you're still gonna get a kapara. And then we wouldn't have a chipper to tell you that a single nesina is enough to be mechaper. Amar Ravada by Yitzchak. So Ravada by Yitzchak says, no, you can't say that. Imkein bital to Torah's Abba Kronos. The Torah says that you have to bring the chatas on the 4 kronos, and now you've switched it around and you've said that you could even put them on the bottom, and you're still gonna get a kapara. Well, how do you have the right to be mevatel what the Torah said? So Gemara, what do you mean? Yirachmana Amar levatlan. If we have a drasha that is mevatel what the Torah originally said kronos, then what's the big deal? Why can't we say that Pasuk said one thing and then it was mevatel it with the riboy? So he's saying, Ravada, what was the kasha? So the original question was like this. It's saying it's teaching us what we wanted to teach you. Right. It's telling you the location, even if you did all of them lamata, it's still going to be good. No, even if you have none lamata, lamayla.
Last keeper, right? So that.
So he said, you didn't do it lamayla at all. You did it all lamata. That means it's interesting because as it's going to come back to haunt us, but the Gemara is making the assumption in this limud that once we said that you only have to have, for the first one tells you only have to have, even if you did 1 on bottom. Then the second one says even if you have 2 on bottom. Then we skip 3 and we go straight to even if you have all 4 on bottom. And Rashi explains because once you have a roiv on bottom, there's no reason to distinguish between having 3 on bottom or 4 on bottom.
Because you think one would be ma'akav, one as long as you had 1 on top.
So that's what I would think.
Yeah.
But that's what the Gemara is assuming.
What's the Torah?
But then Ravada Bar Yitzchak said, how could you say such a thing? You mavatal the whole concept. The Torah says that you have to put the dam of the chatas on the corners which are on the top of the mizbech, and you've got rid of the whole thing. You say you could put it all on the bottom like every other carbon. So the Gemara says back to him, what do you mean? The Torah said you should put it on the corners, but then the Torah said b'chiper to be mamayit, you don't have to put it on the corners. What's the big deal? So Amar Rava. So Rava says, no, the time is like this. He says, you shouldn't, it doesn't make sense to learn b'chiper, to tell us something that doesn't fully teach us the whole limud. Meaning, we have 3 kronos, it has 3 kronos, so it's not going to really be mamayit all 4, that all 4 should be on bottom. It makes it will only really, he says it should only tell you can do 3 on bottom, but you can't do all 4 on bottom. Because it does, you only have 3 limudim, it should come tell you 3. So, so it should be, so let's say, so the Gemara says, okay, fine. You're saying that the shalish, doesn't make sense that the shalish should only do a partial thing. That means if you're going to do, what he's saying is, if you're going to use the chipper, it should really result in saying that you can only do 3 on top and 1 on, even if you do 3 on bottom and 1 on top, that's good enough. You shouldn't make that extra assumption that once you have a roiv, that should go to 4. So Gemara says, so Einachanami, why can't you say that? See, his taina was, okay, so since you can't, that doesn't make sense. So let's say instead that the Bechiper is coming like we wanted to say that a single Nesina's dam is enough to be Mechaper. Instead of saying that Shalish is going to be 3, even 3 on bottom and 1 on top. The Gemara says, well, what's the problem? Why can't you say, why can't you taka say that? If you're saying that it's more sensible to say if you have 3 Vechipers, rather than saying all 4 can be on bottom, it means that 3 can be on bottom. So say that. Why don't we say that, Taco? Why are you so dead set that you're saying the Shalish has to be telling you a different din because we don't want it to end up that you just have 3 on, you could have 3 on bottom and 1 on top. Why is that problematic? It's like tomorrow. The reason is the reason is because we never find such a thing that you can have some of the Nisin's dam on bottom and some on top. It doesn't make sense that the Torah would dictate such a thing. Now, I can't explain to you why that is problematic, but the Gemara is assuming.
And this is an uptext from all 3 are holding with them. Chibur is referring to different locations.
So he's saying,
or it's just knocking off that last one we just said.
It's just knocking off the we said that he said the taina was that the chipper has to be telling us our original thing, because it doesn't make sense that 3 should mean all 4 can be on bottom. So the Gemara says, okay, so it doesn't mean that all 4 will be on bottom. It means that 3 will be on bottom. The Gemara says, no, that can't be, because we can't come out at the end that it's half l'mayla and half l'mata, or partial l'mayla and partial l'mata. That is not something that is ever found, and that's the Gemara's. So therefore, it must be that it's really telling you our original limud of a chipper to tell you that even if you do 1.
This schleps up. Let me that
the kasha,
right? Not just the last chipper. You want the normal chipper? Is that?
Yeah, well, it's on all the whole chipper is come and tell you something else. Zok the Gemara. So that's where. So now we're good, right? We're saying since there's no such thing as Chatz L'mayla, Chatz L'mata, the Bechipers are going back to what we had originally said to tell you that according to Beis Hillel, a single Nesinas Dam is Mechaper. Correct Gemara, but we have a problem. V'loi, is it true that we never find Chatz L'mayla, Chatz L'mata? But Tanan, he's a Mimenu. Now we're talking about the Avodah on Yom Kippur. Avodah on Yom Kippur, you bring the dam, not just lifnim, into the where is this talking about? I have to make sure. So this is on the kapyrus. This is lifnai v'lifnim. That on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol would go not just into the heichel, he'd go all the way into the kachei kachim, and rimaza 1 on top and 2 on bottom. So you see that there is such a thing that we have something that is hazah partially on top and partially on bottom. So why are you saying it's impossible to understand v'chipper to tell you could have 3 on bottom and 1 on top? Because we find by Yom Kippur such a thing. And for the Gemara, kematzlach. No, when the Kohen Gadol is zayrik the dam in the kachei kachim, it doesn't mean he does partially l'mayla and partially l'mata, but rather it means kematzlach. My kematzlach, what does that mean? Kematzlach, Machir Rabbi Yehuda, kimingadna, like a nigud. Nigud, we have mangidle that he whipped him. We have throughout Shas that someone who gets malchus derabbanan is called kamangid. So this is also talking about whipping, It means that the person, the Kohen Gadol, when he does the dam, it doesn't mean he puts some on the top of the aron, the kapyrus, which is the covering of the aron, and some on the bottom of it. But rather, he does some with his fingers up in an upward motion, some with a downward motion, but doesn't actually go on the top and on the bottom. It's just talking about the motion that he uses in being zayrik. But it doesn't result in it being on the top and the bottom. So we don't have a raya that there actually is such a thing as a nesinis lamaila together with a nesinis lamata. What it just means is the direction that he throws it in, but not where it lands. Fact the Gemara, Hiza al tiarosh hamazbeach sheva pa'amim. But we ask another question. The Torah says, when you, in addition to that the Kohen Gadol's putting the dam, being zayrik the dam in the kachei kachim, he also was zayrik it on the mizbeach hazav and the heichel. And it says it's hiza al tiaroi. What does it mean, hiza al tiaroi? He did 7 times on the tiaroi of the mizbeach. My lava palge the mizbeach. Doesn't that mean the tiaroi is the middle of the mizbeach? Kedamri inchi tiara de yuma. When we say tiar, that means the clean part of the day, which is Rashi teaches the afternoon, midday, when the clearest part of the day, when the sun is at its apex. So the tiaroi on the mizbeach also means at the midpoint of the mizbeach. And Rashi explained this is a problem because if you're trying to be zayrik on the midpoint of the mizbeach, it's ef shel tzamtzum. You're not going to get it exactly on the halfway point. So some is going to be on bottom and some is going to be on top. So you have a result that you do find another case where we seem to have found the case we have part lamaila and part lamata. Amar Rav Shila, he says no, your understanding of tiaroi is entirely wrong. Agiluya, when it says that it's al tiaroi shemizbeach, it doesn't mean in the midpoint of the mizbeach hazav, but rather it means on the cleaned part of the mizbeach hazav. Dechsev ke'etzam hashamayim l'toyar, that is by the nesinas hatayra, the Zkenim saw the Shemayim with B'toyar, like they saw it clearly. So it's saying that the Kohen Gadol, when he throws the dam, he does Sheva Pa'amim, he clears off a spot on the Mizbeach Hazav, on the top of the Mizbeach Hazav, and he throws it there. It doesn't have anything to do with the midpoint of the Mizbeach, but rather means on a clean part of the Mizbeach. Okay, so we've answered that. Fact the Gemara, a third attempt to show that we sometimes have Lamaila Lamata. Va'ika Shirayim. There's the Shirayim that Shirayim go on the bottom by the Yisod, right? After you do the Zrikas Hadam, the Shirayim go al Yisod, and then the Nesinas Dam of a Chatas goes on the Kronos. So you see that there is something that could be partially on top and partially on bottom. So the Shirayim, what are you talking about Shirayim? What does Shirayim have to do with this? We're talking about Nesinas Dam Zrika. Shirayim, if you don't do it on the bottom, it's not Makav. How could you say you find something? This is not as crucial. Shirayim are not in the mix. So the Ika Shirayim hapnimim. There is one man amar. While it's true that Shirayim generally are not Makav, we're going to actually come, I think, on the Flam Tesam at base. And we'll see that there's a Manda Amar that says the Shiraim of the Chatas Hapnimim, right? The Parkoi and Mashiach and Param Davish Tzibur, all those Chatoyas that are brought on the inside. And we say that those Shiraim, there's a Manda Amar that says that they're Ma'akiv. So we see that those are Ma'akiv, that you have to, when you zayrik the dam on the Mizbeach Hapnimi, you have to then take the Shiraim and you mechuyev to pour it out on the Yisod of Mizbeach Hachitzin. So you find something which is partially a mile and partially a mato. So although it's true that some is lamaila and some is lamata there, but it's not on the same mizbeach. The zrikas dam is on the mizbeach hapnimi, and the requirement to pour out the shiraim is on the mizbeach hachitzon. So you still don't have any riot. We still never find a standard case of lamaila lamata, and therefore we're forced to say that this pasuk is not talking like you wanted to say. Lagabi doing 3 lamata and 1 lamaila, it must be because there's no such. We never have such a result. It must be like we had originally suggested. That say Beis Hillel says that you only need 1 zrika.
What's this answer? B'chad makom kamyon?
That means it's on 2 separate mizbeches. We don't have we never find that on the same mizbeach some goes l'mayla and some go l'mata. Because the shirayim go on the mizbeach hachitzin and we're talking about the chatzas hapnimi, though the zrikas dam is on the mizbeach hapnimi. So you never find on one single mizbeach that it's split between the bottom and the top.
On the mizbeach hapnimi, the shirayim would be put on the outside mizbeach hachitzin.
There's no shirayim on the mizbeach hapnimi. There's no yusoid. There's no such thing as shirayim there. There was a very clean area. There was not things floating around on the floor. There were very few kabbanis that went there altogether. Very rarely, right? These Parkoy and Mashiach and Param Dava Shel Tzibur, I can't imagine happened very often. If you remember when we learned it in the previous Masechta, right? It had to be that they paskin and then they paskin fakert, and they did fakert when they paskin incorrectly. Very rare circumstances.
So we left with still having two limudim, right? The kronos and the tipper.
Right? We have two shittas about what the limit is, right? One we just argued, he argued about the kronos. He said, I have a different way of analyzing the kronos, that it comes out that it's only, he did Yeshem Lemasiris, Yeshem Lemikra. Now it's saying a separate thing that he learns out for Bechiper. But whatever, that's certainly Beis Hillel's shita. We can have two shitas about what his source is. It's not problematic. Zaktuma, Tanya. Beleza ben Yaakov Omer. Bishami Omer, Shtei matanas shebechatas, the two matanas of achatas that we said are ma'akav, va'acha shebechol Zevachim, metiras umafaglis. So we've been talking, we've been just saying it as a rule, that it's mechaper. But there are two aspects to that which we say it doesn't really make a difference whether we're talking about according to Beis Hillel on all karbanos or according to Beis Shammai, it's two zrikas by chatas and one by other karbanos. But those ones that are mechaper, they have two effects. First of all, they're matiris, that even if you just did, let's stick with a single zrika by a non-chatas, right? Which everyone agrees a single zrika matana achas keeper. So there's two effects. First of all, that one zrika, once you do that zrika, if a person eats the basar after that, he was already mater the basar. And secondly, mefaglos, if he has a machshavas pigel on that single zrika, it's going to be mefagel. If he has a machshavas pigel on the later machshava, it's not going to be mefagel. Beis Hillel disagreed. He said there's no difference between a chatas. Beis Shammai said two. Beis Hillel said the same thing will apply even by a chatas, that even one is both materis and mefagelis. Rav Ashi asked the following question: if we're saying that it's only going to be mefagel according to Beis Shammai with two zrikas, so it's harder to be mefagel according to Beis Shammai. You need to have a machshavas pigel on both of the first zrikas. We're going in this mandamar in mefaglim b'chatzi matter. So you have to have a machshavas pigel on both of them. So this is a kula of Beis Shammai that it's harder to achieve pigel, which is a kula. Amalei Rava says no. Ki itzel le'teir itzel. This question, what the din is about a single, what's the din by a chatas, whether you need one zrika or two zrikas, whether it's mechaper, was asked in regard to how much it takes to be mater the basar. So the gabi being mater the basar, according to Beis Shammai, you need two nesinas dam. According to Beis Hillel, you only need one. So that really is a chumrah of Beis Shammai. Depends which question you're talking about. We said there's two outcomes of saying that something that the chatas needs two nesinas dam. One is lagabi that lagabi it's being mefagel, which ein chanami is a kula of Beis Shammai. But the question was asked in the other direction about whether one nesinas dam by chatas is mater, and Beis Shammai said no, you need two in order to be mater the basar. The Havli Beis Shammai l'chumra. That Beis Shammai is l'chumra. Amr Rav Yochanan. Shalosh matanos shebechatois einam bois belayla We're talking about these three. We're going now in Beis Hillel, right? We're leaving aside the Machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and we're making things as simple as possible. According to Beis Hillel, all karbanos, when you do one nesinas dam from the required nesinas, it's going to already be a kapara. So what about those other three that we say that are not mechaper? So what is their status? So first Rabbi Yochanan says those three matan shebechatos, it cuts both ways. It's going to have, first of all, eina bois balaylo. Did I skip?
No.
First of all, right, a zrika cannot be done at night, and these zrikas, in spite of the fact that you already got a kapara, will still maintain that rule that they can't be brought at light. Ubois la'achar misa. However, generally the rule is that you cannot do an avoda achatas la'achar misa, or I'm not sure if this is by all kabbanas or just chatas. I would have to look at the Rashi. But la'achar misa im nosa matonu rishino mesu balea farkiba b'shayna ve'enshem chatas gemura al adam. It lives on mishum. Yeah, so it's chatas. So, but it's still going to be brought la'achar misa because you already had a kapara on the first one. So in this sense, we're saying it's not. We respect the first nesina, and these are not treated as real zrikas. But it will be treated like a real zrika. That if you bring it bachutz, if you make a nesina's dam bachutz on the later three zrikas after you did the first one that was already mechaper, you're still going to be chayiv for doing a zrikas dam for being makrev bachutz. That was Rabbi Yochanan's. So he sort of came two in one direction and one in the other. Rav Papa is going to have 12, and he's going to say 8 in one direction and 4 in the other. Rav Papa, yesh mehen tchilasa, yesh mehen kesayfai. Some things are ketchilasa, meaning that it's going to be considered a valid zrika and it's going to have the rules of a regular zrika. V'yesh and kesayfai, and some of them are treated as that it's after the kapara, and therefore it's not a valid zrika. So chutz, the gabe chutz, all these ones. Chutz v'layla zaras u'klisharas karen ve'etzba kibbutz shirayim k'tchilasan. These whole list, the first list, are all going to be the things that it's treated like a valid nesina. So l'gabe bringing it b'chutz, like we said in Rav Yochanan, Rav Papa saying the same thing. That if you bring it b'chutz,
what is the sin of b'chutz over here?
That if you do a nesina's dam, instead of doing on the mizbeach, you take it outside of Yerushalayim and you do it on a mizbeach there, that you're going to be chayiv for being makar b'chutz, which is chayiv kares.
What mizbeach in the Bama?
He built a mizbeach.
It's even weirder. He did one shpritz in the Beis Mikdash and he brought the blood out.
And he found like he's saying on a bama. I don't know. It was a bisman in a time that you weren't allowed to have a bama. And he went and he did it. He made himself a backyard mizbeach.
He did the first shpritz in the Beis Mikdash and he brought it out.
Right. A lot, like we often say, people did weird things. If you try to figure out why people were doing things, it's very hard to understand.
Nowadays also, nothing changed.
At least you see some self-interest. Right? Today people do strange things, but at least they have some motivation. What are they gaining by all these problems? Yeah, by having a machshava while he's doing the shechita that he's going to do it chutz l'zman. Just listen to the rule. Don't say anything. Don't think, don't say. Yeah, anyway, so that's one. The Laila, if he does it at night, also he's going to be chayiv for doing it after the time. Zaras, if he was a zara and he brought it, he's going to be chayiv. It's going to passel. Uklisharis. If he did it without a klisharis, also it's going to passel. Karen, he did it not. Was Karen? I guess he did it not on the Karen, he did it in a different spot. The etzpa, he didn't do it with the etzpa, you have to do it with the etzpa. Kibus, there's also a din, which we're going to be discussing over the next amud or blot or so, that the Torah says that if a spritz of dam gets on the begadim of a kohen, he has to wash out the beged. As we're going to see, that is specifically on the dam in a klisharis, so we're talking about when he's Zyrek from the Klisharis onto the Mizbeach, and some got on his clothing, it's going to have a din that he has to be mechabasit, v'shirayim, and legabe the din that the shirayim have to go on the side. You have to, if he did, let's say he had 4 separate kaisis, and he did the first kais, he did the first zrika, so he was already mechaper. Then he does 3 more zrikas from 3 different kaisis. All of them are going to need the shirayim on the side. All these din are tchilas, and those are all valid zrikas, and they're going to have the same din as the original zrika. But misa, the gabe misa, that means if the bailam died, it's not going to have a din that it's batal. You could still do even though it's chata shemesa bala, you're still going to do the last rikas. Loy sharia, and the basar that was already hutar, that was mutter, is not going to. The basar is already going to be mutter, so these shiraim are not going to be mater the basar. Like we said, the first one is already mater. And loy mefagel, like we said also, that the latter zrikas are not going to cause them to become pigel. And also, the loy ayla legavoy, legabi, the din that you can now let it bring the dam bifnim, if it's a chatas chutz, you now let it bring it bifnim. All these are kasaifon. You're not going to be chayiv for doing these things, and it's not going to be treated as a valid zrika. So that is Rav Papa's laying out the difference between the first one and the latter 3. Okay. So then, Be'ez Hashem, tomorrow we'll go back to analyze really one of these, this whole long list. We're not really going to go through all of them one by one, but we're going to go through this din that nitas, if it's spritzes, that we're saying it's going to be tchilah, so you have to wash it out. Okay, stop over here.
Great day.